Welcome to our house, the House of Fi. At the House of Fi, we are all about achieving financial independence for families. Wherever you are in your financial independence journey, we want our house to be a place where you can learn and get inspired. If you are a parent on the journey to Fi, then come on in. We're glad that you're here. Here are your hosts, Wendy and Tamika.
Hello, House of Fi family. Today, Tamika and I are interviewing Jillian Johnsrud of Montana Money Adventures. Jillian is a writer, a creator, and mentor, and she uses all of those skills to help others design their best life. She and her husband live in Montana with their 5 children, and she has a lot to tell us and a lot that we can learn from her. We are so happy that she could join us today. On the podcast today, we have Jillian Johnsrud, and I have been so anxious to talk with her. We have so much in common, but I will let her go into her story. And with that, welcome Jillian Johnsrud.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Also, we have my co-host on the line, Tamika.
Hi, guys.
All right. So, Jillian, you have a blog at montanamoneyadventures.com. How long have you had your blog?
I started writing about 2 years ago.
And so I mentioned that we have something in common. Tell me about your family.
Oh, man. Where should I start?
Well, let's start with how many children do you have?
So at home right now, I've got my oldest who's 10, who's a biological kiddo. And then we adopted a sibling group of 3 that are biologically half siblings. And then I've got one more biological child. Our oldest, Micah, actually passed away when he was 20, about 6 years ago. I've raised 6 kiddos altogether, but we've got 5 in the house currently.
Wow. So you have a busy household. I totally get it.
Yeah.
How did you come to decide to add to your family through adoption?
I was always really interested in adopting. It was actually the very first date with my husband. The first time we went out, we discussed adoption. Like I said, how do you feel about adopting? And he was like, I love that idea. I was like, okay, next question. How do you feel about adopting from foster care? And he said, I would love that. I actually have a foster brother. My parents became foster parents after we all moved out. And that was Micah. That ended up being our first kid. We ended up adopting Micah about 2 or 3 years after that first date.
Oh, that is amazing. How old was he when you adopted him?
He was about 11.
Such a wonderful, wonderful story. So, Jillian, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up, as far as your finances go?
Yeah, growing up, basically my entire childhood, we lived kind of right at or under the poverty line with my stepfather and my mom. You know, they worked minimum wage jobs. Sometimes my mom was able to work a little bit nights or when we were in school, but for the most part, she ran the entire household and did all of that work herself. So money was always tight. It was always a touchy and honestly kind of painful topic.
Did experiencing that carry over into your adulthood? Like how did that carry over into adulthood for you? Did it make you more frugal? Did it, I know that, like, for instance, for me, one of the ways that my mom would kind of show love, because we didn't have money all the time either, but I would come home from school and there would be clothes all over my bed that she had gone and done a binge shopping, and they're living paycheck to paycheck and can't really afford that kind of thing. So for my mom, it was like an emotional release, I guess. And so I have found that in the past I've done things like that. Was there anything that carried over from having, such a simple beginning that carried over into adulthood for you?
Yeah, there was good and bad. It was those childhood experiences that really helped set me on the path to wanting to have more financial freedom. It really inspired me because it was a difficult situation that we were in. My stepfather, he drank a lot, and it was the mood of the house became very, very negative and rather abusive, and I wanted out, and we didn't have the money to make that happen. And so I very quickly saw, money gives us choices.
Right.
And money gives us freedom. And if we would have had a little bit more money, maybe we could have had a different life. Poverty definitely felt like being stuck. And to the shopping and things like that, it's one of the biggest challenges that I feel just dealing with the poverty is there's so much shame about poverty. Like, it's such a sore spot that yeah, there's this tendency to spend any extra money you have either kind of pacifying that pain, like the small comforts, or trying to cover up the shame. Like, if we have to be poor, if we don't have an option, at least we don't want to look poor.
Right.
And it's something I see, especially, there's a lot of different kinds of poverty, but one thing I've labeled like second generation poverty, when our parents grew up in poverty and then became middle class and aren't technically in poverty, but they still have all those same triggers, all of that same baggage, is that those parents tend to way overspend on their kids to try to avoid any of the pain or any of the shame that you can feel when you're in poverty. So whenever I see parents spend like hundreds and hundreds of dollars on their kids' clothes, I think, they might have grown up with the secondhand, doesn't fit quite right.
Right.
Outfits.
Is that something that you have had to battle with? And if so, how do you combat that?
Oh my goodness, yes. Absolutely. Almost all of my poor financial decisions are traced back to either fear or shame. And it's something I've made a lot of progress on, but it is still a sore spot. If you ever see me really fired up, it's probably because somebody pushed on one of those two buttons. That's where all of my bad behavior comes from. So it was really hard. I had to make this decision that I either wanted to build more financial freedom, or I could pretend that I wasn't poor, but I wasn't probably going to be able to do both. So I either had to build financial freedom but look poor, or not build financial freedom but look middle class. Because we just didn't have, me and my husband, we weren't high income earners. We've never made a ton of money. So we couldn't do both. We couldn't build a bunch of financial freedom and look super middle class. We had to pick.
So, with your experience, did your husband have a similar background with his upbringing and being middle class or lower middle class or lower class?
No, he grew up in the very quintessential middle class family. It's interesting because it presents its own set of challenges, because he grew up in a very middle class lifestyle and went into college as a very broke college student trying to replicate this middle class lifestyle. So when him and I finally met, he had about $10,000 of credit card debt. And it was largely from just trying to live his parents' lifestyle, but as a college student who's making no money.
Right. I think that's a common thing with a lot of younger people, is they want immediately what their parents may have had to work, 10, 15 years to accomplish. Immediately at getting married, you want that big house, you want the nice cars, and, maybe your parents had those too, or that's what you grew up with, but your parents worked really hard to get those.
Yeah, it was a big learning curve that first year of marriage, because it definitely was like two very different backgrounds and mindsets trying to be pushed together. He thought he was being really frugal because instead of going out to eat at like Applebee's or Outback or somewhere like that where his family went, 2 or 3 or 4 times a week. He's like, well, I'll just eat at Jack in the Box. So that's more affordable.
Right.
Which it is. Fair point. But I, like, sit down restaurants, I could probably count on one hand the number of times growing up that we sat down at a restaurant where they, like, bring you water. Like, that was just not part of my childhood. So the idea of going out once a month seemed insane. Like, that was so ridiculously extravagant for me, because that would be like 100 times more than my average. But for him, going out once a month to eat was this horrible scarcity, this horrible deprivation.
So how did the two of you come to an agreement about what your financial future was going to look like? What was there some catalyst?
I think we both really wanted the same outcome. We both had the same goals and the same dreams, and we wanted the same things. It just took a meeting of the minds of what is it actually going to take to get there. I think my husband was more of a, well, just, yeah, that would be nice, but I mean, we'll kind of just keep doing what I'm doing. And I was like, no. We need to, if we want to go here, we actually need a plan to get there.
And so where would you say that you are now in your financial journey?
So when I turned 32, we found out that we were expecting a fifth baby. So I had one biological child at home, and then the same week, as luck would have it, the state officially asked us to adopt the sibling group of 3. I found out I was pregnant, and we had gone from 1 to 5 in less than 2 years. And I told my husband, no. We need to make a change. Like, I am drowning at home already. We can't add a baby to this. This is crazy. So we kind of re-looked at our finances, and we re-looked at our passive income. And I said, you know what? I think this is good enough. I think that we can do this. And right now we bring in, I think it's $2,650 a month from 2 passive income sources. We have investments. We could pull about $800 a month from those at a safe withdrawal rate. But our expenses are only about maybe about $2,000 a month is what we average.
And so was your home paid for? Had you guys already paid off your home? Did that allow a lot of that freedom to happen?
Yeah, that was always one of my big goals. I really wanted to try to pay cash for a house. So we had rented for 10 years and just saved like crazy people. I knew that not having that mortgage payment was going to give us so many options, and it was going to give us so much more freedom. So we had ended up saving about $225,000 by the end of that 10 years. And that includes paying off the $55,000 worth of debt that we started with. And when we moved back to the States, there were lots of houses in that price range. There were actually lots of pretty nice houses in the $150,000 price range. But we, opting for more financial freedom and options, bought a $50,000 house that entire renovation, like the whole thing had to be gutted. And we had exactly 0 skills. So that was a perfect match.
Right.
So we just watched a lot of YouTube videos and slowly but surely figured it out.
Did you live in the house the whole time the renovations were happening?
Yes.
With the children?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So at the time, this was such a disaster. Sometimes when it rains, it pours. So we had moved back to Montana we were actually living overseas. We were able to live in Germany for 4 years, which was amazing. We had just moved back. Our oldest son was in Nebraska, getting ready to go to college. He was 20. We moved back. I got a job. We bought a house about a week after closing. Like, once we had gone through and tore out most of the things was when my son passed away with like no warning. And it was the next year was pretty rough. Because now we're in the house. Mm-hmm. This is where we're living in with nothing, like no kitchen, no bathroom, and just sleeping on an air mattress on a torn up floor and just grieving immensely while I'm in a brand new job and trying to figure it all out. So yeah, it was.
Wow. Kudos to both of you for finding a way to navigate all that, because I can't even imagine.
There was a lot of tears and a lot of swearing,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah. But in the end, honestly, we were stronger as a couple. And I think no matter what you go through, I do mentoring with people, and I say the two metrics we're going to focus on is growth. Like every kind of growth, your personal growth, your skill set growth, your knowledge growth, knowing more about yourself. So growth is the first metric. And the second metric is a relationship, to deepen and grow our relationship. And if at the end of whatever you try, whatever you venture into, you've done those two things, those are the metrics you get to take with you. These are the building block that make other things successful. And through being Micah's mom, for those 8-9 years, I grew tremendously as a human being, as a mom. Being his mom really helped prepare me to adopt 3 kiddos.
Right.
And him and I had sometimes a difficult, but at the end of the day, a really neat, amazing relationship. So, and his death in that first year was the same. We grew a lot as people, and we grew in our relationships.
Right.
So I can't, coming through that, there's nothing about that I can regret.
So I want to switch gears just a little bit. I was curious, you are known for mini retirements, and I was wondering if you could, because I still don't quite understand what you mean by that. Is it just a longer vacation, or what exactly is a mini retirement?
I like to define mini retirements is any time that we step away from our 9 to 5 to do something really significant and meaningful. So, and to contrast that, it would be entirely possible to get laid off from your job and spend a month or a year in your underwear eating Doritos, watching Netflix, and being depressed. That is entirely possible. I would not classify that as mini retirement.
Right.
But it's also possible just to take a month and do something amazing. Do something that just really matches up with your values and your goals and your dreams. When I was in my 20s, 23, 24, I took a month-long road trip with one of my best friends, and we traveled from DC all the way to Seattle and back in a month. And it was incredible. We stayed all sorts of places, and we slept in the car, and we tent camped, and we slept on people's couches. But it was such an amazing experience, and I'm so glad I did it then, because there's no way that her and I could do that now.
Right.
Yeah. There's no way. My husband, I'm leaving 5 kids alone with my husband while I gallivant across the country for no particular reason. So I think that there's a lot of our dreams and a lot of our goals come with an expiration date. My husband and I, we just got back 2 weeks ago from a 10-week road trip to 10 national parks. With all 5 kids in a pop-up camper. This is an incredible experience, but it has an expiration date.
Right.
We will not be doing this in 10 years. We will definitely not be doing this in 20 years. I'm not going to load a bunch of 20-year-olds into a pop-up camper for 10 weeks. It's kind of now or never.
So Jillian, as you talk about this, it's just giving me goosebumps, because I finally, after being a school nurse for the last 6 to 7 years, I'm taking the full summer off without anything to do. And I feel there are little things that I'm doing, I will say that, but I feel like I finally, since finding Phi, can see how to try on different types of these mini retirements, because I don't actually know what I want to do when I do finally walk away from working. So how would you lead, if you were mentoring someone like me, how would you lead someone towards figuring out how to plan these mini retirements?
So let's just stick with the example that it is you. So how I like to start with people is we start with mentoring questions. And this is something I have for free on my site. If people go to my newsletter, I have even conversation sheets and worksheets to make it easy peasy. But I like to pull out I'd like to synthesize all of the answers from all 3 questions and just get a really clear idea of what people want their life to look like. What is actually really important to them? What shows up in all 3 questions as something that just rings true for then. And then we kind of sort it by, what would you maybe do next decade? What would you love to see happen in the next 5 years or 3 years or this year? And then once we have that, we can start to kind of reverse engineer and say, well, what's the first step? I have a YouTube video called Test and Scale. Like, how can we test this out and then start to scale it? And so before you took your mini retirement, we would do lots and lots of tests. We would test it, all these goals, all these dreams. We would test it all sorts of ways. The things that take 1 to 4 hours, just little things. And we would grow in relationships. Like, we would take notes and we would really pay attention. And then you'll get to the point where it doesn't fit with your 9 to 5, where you just can't test it anymore. You can't scale it anymore without more time, more energy, and honestly more bandwidth. Because sometimes people don't lack the time. They lack the mental bandwidth to really focus on something else. And that's when you really need to do the mini retirement.
Okay, that is awesome. I need to find the notes, the metrics, and try to implement some of these.
So one fun, not fun, I'm joking. I'm being sarcastic. Not fun. One challenging step that I left out, but for you specifically. So once we have all of these things outlined and we've kind of have all of the, I'll do that next decade. I want to do this in 5 years, this in 3 years. We look at the motivations that we have for these things, and we try to dig out what those motivations are. But then we also look at the challenges. And honestly, this is something in any goal setting that most people skip, because we don't want to talk about the challenges. We would rather ignore the challenges, but we can't find a solution, and we can't adjust our mindset unless we acknowledge the things that are holding us back. And it takes a little bit of digging and sorting, but once you bring those to light, once you say, actually, this is a challenge. And oftentimes it's stuff that we picked up along the journey, stuff that maybe our parents passed down to us, or a mindset that's not helpful for you specifically towards your goals. It might be a mindset that's perfectly helpful for somebody else, but won't take you where you need to go. And that is oftentimes where the magic happens. Like, once we do that digging and sorting and we shed a little bit of light and truth on what's actually holding people back, they start to make a tremendous amount of progress.
It just sounds so fulfilling to be able to help people get to that step, to be able to shape and help them craft that vision, and then to take the metrics, to do the writing, to monitor the growth, monitor the relationships, and encourage the communication, so that they can actually go through that process and get to some of these experiences that they can never, you like you said, there's an expiration on some of these. And I feel that same way too. My kids are still young. I have 3 kids, and I do want to spend the summer at a cabin on a lake for the whole summer while they're young. I do want to look out the window and watch them go down to the kayaks or the rowboats or whatever. But there is something that's keeping me stuck from doing that. So I'm so interested in looking more into this. Yeah,
it's like magic. It is my favorite thing in the entire world. And it's just other people's excitement and enthusiasm. Like, there's just nothing like it. It's so much fun. Yeah, and people, most of them describe it as like, I'm scared, but I'm doing it, and I feel fully alive. Like, now I'm really making stuff happen, and it's outside of my comfort zone a little bit, but for the first time in a long time, like, things are starting to move and things are starting to break free. And it's just such a fun, for me at least, it's a fun process. For them, it's a lot of work.
Right.
But for me, it's an awful lot of fun.
Jillian, is Flexible Fire, you talk about Flexible Fire on your website as well. Is that, are they the same thing? Flexible Fire and the mini retirements, are they essentially the same animal or variations?
Not really. The mini retirement is more taking a step back for a defined period of time to accomplish something that's really meaningful.
So the mini retirements are to take actionable steps towards something meaningful.
For a defined period of time.
But the flexible fire is different.
Yeah, that's more our end lifestyle game, where we build a life that is such a perfect fit for everything that matters to us, that we would never stop doing it. We would never retire from it because it's our ideal. And so in Flexible File, I try to help people create the right combination of passive income and their passion income, along with the lifestyle that is just a perfect fit for them.
So at what stage would you think that someone is ready to start considering flexible fire? Is it for everybody, or do you have to be debt-free? Is there some place that ideally someone should be before they could consider making a plan for flexible fire?
I think you should start planning it at the very beginning.
Like right now.
Right now, or 10 years ago. 10 years ago would have been ideal.
Right.
But honestly, that the passion income and the passive income, those take a lot of time. And it takes a lot of time to just figure out what it is we want to do. There's a lot of people who think, yeah, I would love to do all of these things. I was talking to a reader, stopped by. I live right outside Glacier National Park. So all summer I have tons and tons of company. And we were hanging out and he was like, yeah, I just stepped away from my job for a year. And before I left, I wrote down this huge list of all the things I wanted to do. He's like, the funny thing is I don't actually want to do most of them. Now that I have the time. I thought I did when I didn't have the time. The reality is I don't really want to do those. And it takes a long time to figure that out. Surprisingly long, actually. So the more people can test and scale and grow things from the beginning, because most people are like, I don't even know what work I would be passionate about. I have no idea. So I would rather people start taking little steps to figuring that out than being like, well, I'm going to wait till I'm completely financially independent and then I'm going to start from scratch, which is painful and frustrating oftentimes, and just less enjoyable than if you've slowly been scaling something and testing something and having that growth in relationship metrics working for you all along.
So one thing, it's slightly different and topic, but I think that it's related. I recently KonMari'd my whole home, and that means I tidied everything and I decluttered everything, and it has been the most life-changing experience in terms of giving more time and setting up each room to be supportive of me and my family spending time together. Yeah. I know that you speak a lot or write a lot about two things: minimalism as part of the process to managing a big family, and also this thing that I love, which I never thought of, which is this quit list.
Yeah.
Can you talk about those two concepts?
Yeah, minimalism kind of hit us like a truck because we were in dire need of it. We have this house. It's like 1,700 square feet, and we lived in half of it while we renovated because the other half was unfinished. We finished half of it, and then we were like, oh, call it good for a while. And that was fine. But then we added 3 kids at once. And everyone was like, when are you guys going to move? When are you guys going to move? When are you going to get a bigger house? And then we found out we're pregnant. And they're like, surely now you're going to. And it turns out we didn't really need a bigger house. We have the perfect amount of space for our people. But we had way too much stuff, like a suffocating amount of stuff. And it was just so stressful. It was so much work. So minimalism was something that we embraced in like every area of our life. When our kiddos came into our life, they had 12 appointments a week, every single week. And it was so stressful. They were, they had gone through all of this trauma and they were just little hot messes themselves. Yeah. And I was trying to manage all of these appointments and all of these professionals. And there's lots of big feelings from everybody going through this ordeal.
IEP meetings, 504 meetings, social working, all of those. That's a lot of appointments, or just between all of them. Oh, geez.
It was 12 a week. So we had a couple visitation, and we had OT, and we had PT, and we had talk therapy, and we had social workers, and we had CASA workers, and we had it was just a lot every week. So we had to be kind of ruthless in what's going to work for our family right now. And getting rid of a lot of our stuff helped because I didn't have the time or the bandwidth to pick up toys or to organize stuff. I needed enough stuff that it didn't ever need to be organized.
So you were doing all of this while still working?
So once our 3 kiddos came, I had to leave my full-time job.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But we had always lived on just one income. And so it was, it's always hard when you cut your income in half. Like, it's not a super fun thing. But because we had created that habit and that discipline, it gave us the option to do that.
At that point, had you already had rental properties to bring in passive income?
We ended up paying cash for our house, and about 6 months later, we bought our first rental. And then I would say about 6 months after we brought 3 kiddos home, we bought our second rental property. And my husband had been retired from the Army, so we also had his military pension. So those things were already kind of in place.
So does your food, because our food budget is kind of, I was speaking with Tamika about it a couple weeks ago, and it's almost embarrassing how much it was initially. And then I saw what your food budget was, and now I'm embarrassed again.
Oh, we all have to start somewhere.
Because I thought I was doing so good. And to see that your food budget is between $600 and $700 a month, I am just, I'm amazed. What are some of the things that help you get that food budget so low?
So it's kind of a 3-part system that at this point, I almost feel bad because I don't put any thought or effort into it. It's just that's the way it works out every month. But we started with ingredients that cost less than $1 a pound. And we kind of figured out what those things are. Things that are just naturally super affordable, like rice or beans or whole wheat pasta. And then we figured out recipes that we could make for about $1 a person. And now we have it's not up there quite yet. It will be. I have a post about it, and I have a free printable in my resources vault that my subscribers get, where you can print it out. And I have all of our $1 recipes that just our family eats all listed to kind of make it easy and labeled like gluten-free or vegan. So we came up with all of these recipes, and I just encourage people to find like 2 or 3 or 4 a month. Find 2 or 3 or 4 recipes that are super cheap to make, that are easy and healthy and affordable, that your family likes. Because I have 5 kids, so it's not like we can eat super weird, crazy stuff. And slowly build that repertoire of your list. Because once you have about 15 just easy go-to recipes that cost less than $1 a person, your food bill will naturally start to come down without any extra effort. Because if the food that's quick and easy and healthy to make that everybody likes is affordable, that's just what you'll end up making whenever you're like, oh, we got like 20 minutes to make dinner. What should we have? And then the third stuff that we do is we kind of track how much the sale price is for certain things. And I had to start doing this because my husband could never, ever remember. Like, he would call me from the store. He's like, so whole wheat pasta is like 88 cents a pound. Is that a good price? Is that? He just couldn't remember. And then when things get to kind of that low price threshold, we buy a whole bunch of it. And it actually makes grocery shopping so much easier because we're not buying 40 different things every week. We're buying like 20 things.
So do you go to, like, when you do your shopping, are you going to a regular grocer, or are you going to someplace like Costco or Sam's Club?
So we do have a Costco here, and we shop at Costco quite a bit. I love Costco. It's generally not the cheapest, but for us, it's a good kind of everyday price on most things. And then there's 1 or 2 grocery stores that we go to. And honestly, I never look at the ads. I never clip coupons. Like, I don't put any effort into this. It's just simply while we're walking through the grocery store, if we happen to see one of our staples like canned beans or whole wheat noodles or something that's on sale at kind of our sale price, then we buy like 30 or 50 of those. And then we don't have to worry about it for a couple months.
That's awesome. Well, I'm inspired. My goal is to now cut that food budget in half again. Now, so I do have one question. Do you include in the $600 to $700 that like paper goods and toiletries, or is that a separate category?
We do include that.
Okay, I do too.
Just because we're lazy and it seems like too much work to break up our Costco receipt. But I do exclude other Costco things that like aren't at all food or like household product related. So
okay.
Like it wouldn't include if we bought like jeans there or a new sink faucet or all of the other fun random things that Costco offers up.
Well, I love it. I'm going to have to check back in with you. You're my accountability partner now for grocery shopping.
Nice.
So you mentioned that you just got back from a vacation, and I was reading something about that one thing that you did was you rented out your house to help pay for the vacation, which I thought was amazing. How did you decide to do that? And I mean, just practically speaking, what do? Do you empty out all your drawers? Do you take out all of your clothes from your closet and box them up? Like, I'm totally intrigued by what you did.
So this was one of the great benefits of kind of this journey through minimalism is that we actually had space in our house for an extra person, where 3 or 4 years ago, that would not have been the case at all. It would have been so much work to get our house ready for another person to live in it that we probably wouldn't have hassled with it. But we didn't. So we made sure it was super clean, which was a little stressful before you leave for an enormous trip to also make sure every single thing is clean. But we did that. And I tried to make sure that there was a little bit of space. Like I pushed all of my clothes that are in my closet to one side of my closet. I cleared off a whole shelf in the bathroom. I cleared off a couple shelves in our pantry, little things like that, just so she would have some physical space to put her things. We put an ad on Craigslist. In the future, I might use Airbnb, but it was just like one extra step. And within a couple days, like a few people, different people had applied. And my husband was a little nervous, like we wouldn't get quality renters. Mm-hmm. He was like, what kind of people would want to rent a house for next week? But it turns out there's a lot of people who are just in transition. We had people apply that were building a house, and they had closed on the house they were living in, but their new house wasn't built yet, so they needed something temporary and furnished. We had people who were moving here for work and didn't want to buy just yet. And the person we ended up picking was a traveling nurse. So she was like a respiratory specialist, and she would come in for 12 weeks and work in an area and then move to another town for 12 weeks. So it was perfect. Yeah, we ended up renting it. Well, we charged $2,500. She ended up wanting to pay us $2,650. So that's how much she paid us. And it was amazing. I mean, I would have had to pay at least $300 or $400 to have someone just take care of the yard and water and mow the grass anyways. And she did all of that. And just knowing someone was in our house to keep an eye on it was big comfort for me, actually, while we were gone.
I love that idea. And I love that, it serves several purposes. And then you have this vacation that you really weren't out any money for, which is just awesome. So we are nearing the end of our time, and we have a few final questions for you. Tamika, did you have anything else that you wanted to cover before we go to the final questions?
In one of the other podcasts that when you started your journey with your husband, had $55,000 in debt combined. And I know you said he had the $10,000 in credit cards. Where did the rest of the $55,000 come from, and how did you get it paid off?
Yeah, so Adam had, in addition to $10,000 of credit card debt, he had about $35,000 in student loans. So that first year we were married, we actually lived in a camper, like a travel trailer that I had bought after I graduated high school. I bought my own camper, so I had my own place to live. And we were living in there, and we started to pay down that debt. And then after he graduated, he decided to join the Army. And they agreed to join the Army as an enlisted soldier, because he could have joined as an officer. But if you join as a enlisted soldier, we'll pay off all of your student loans. So that took care of the 35. And then by the time that first year, we had probably paid down about $2,000. That first year we were married, I think we only made about $12,000 that first year. So it was, for us, it was a pretty significant chunk. But then he went away for basic training in AIT for 6 months, and I moved back in with family, and we just saved every single penny of that for those 6 months. And he got a little investment bonus, so we used that to pay off all of his credit card debt. And now I actually had $10,000 of medical debt that I didn't know about.
Wow.
So, yeah, when I was in high school, I ended up having to be hospitalized, and I got $10,000 of medical debt, but I had just turned 18. It was my senior year.
Oh, no.
And so that debt was in my name. Like, that was under my Social Security number. But I never got a bill. And my mom swears she never got a bill. And I wasn't living at home. My senior year of high school, I had moved out, and I was living on my own. So after we pay off the student loans, after we pay off this credit card debt, about a year later, I get my very first bill in the mail for $10,000. And it just blindsided us. It was so discouraging at the time, because we were making so much progress and things were going so well. And I think that that's something that we all face at some point, where we are working really hard and making a lot of progress, and then we have this huge setback. So I always encourage people to do this. Like, if you have medical debt, like, don't put the bills in a drawer. Just call and call and call and call, and just keep in contact with those people. Mine had already gone to collections, but I called the hospital and the collections agency so many times that the hospital actually reassumed the debt. Wow. The collection agency, and they negotiated that if we could pay it off in 6 months, they would cut it in half to $5,000.
Nice.
So that's what we did.
Wow, that is awesome.
So I heard a lot of kind of hacking type things that you guys did. So you lived in your trailer. How long did you live in your trailer?
2 years.
Was that where was it located? Was it located like on family property or friend's property? Where did you actually live?
I had gone to college from Montana to southern Idaho, and I just lived in a little kind of crappy trailer park with other RV campers. So yeah, I lived on this patch of dirt, and I paid $150 a month in lot rent, covered my lot rent and my utilities.
Well,
for 2 years. And that was our plan, actually, was to buy another trailer for our first duty assignment wherever we got stationed. And we're like, we're just going to live in a camper. Like, that's how we're doing this. We ended up getting stationed in Washington, D.C., which doesn't actually have a lot of camper parks. So we had to come up with a new plan.
And then the decision for him to go enlisted as opposed to an officer to pay down the student loan debt, which is just awesome too.
And actually, in retrospect, I was so scared of that debt, and I was so scared I just wanted it gone so fast. Mathematically speaking, it would have been much better in retrospect if he would have went officer and we just would have paid it down ourselves.
Wow.
Because of the pay difference.
Yeah, the pay difference, all of those 10 years he served, plus into his retirement, would have been significant. But it was just out of fear of that debt and just wanting it gone as fast as possible. So mathematically, I regret it, but it was probably the right choice during that time.
Not everything is a mathematical equation too, it made you feel better. And, there's debates back and forth all the time about whether or not you pay off your house or you take that money and you invest it. And for some people, just having that paid off is such an emotional relief. and provide security, that it really isn't a wrong decision. It's just what's best for you. All right. So we are going to then get to our final questions. And we already covered one of them, so we're not going to go and redo that one. The one I did want to ask you is, let's pretend your children are listening and you have their ear and their undivided attention. What lesson about money would you want to convey to them and carry into their adulthood?
I think I would want for my kiddos, honestly, just like most adults, is gaining the perspective to really invest in yourself and do the very best you can with what you have. Because there will always be people who have more, and there will always be people who have less. But I feel like we're just responsible to do the best we can with what we've been given, and to double down on themselves sometimes, and invest in their own skill sets and their own growth and their own development. Because I see so many people, even as young adults, kind of opt out of that. Like, I'm not going to have what those other people have, and this is probably as good as it's going to get, so I'll just coast.
And then the next question is, what is one life hack that you think our listeners could benefit from that would also bring joy and fulfillment to their lives?
I love toy minimalism. It has revolutionized the amount of time and energy and conflict that is in our house. So as a general rule, each of the kids get 3 toys, and they're 100% responsible for maintaining and cleaning up and organizing their 3 toys at a time. The rest of them all go on a huge shelf downstairs, and they can only swap them once their toy is like cleaned and organized and ready to put on the shelf. And if it's too hard, I don't like shame my kids. I just say, if this is too hard for you, I can help you. But if I need to help you, that means that you have too many toys out. So if you can't take care of 3, that's fine. Maybe we'll try it with 2 toys, or maybe we'll try it with 1. You clean as many toys as you're able to, and I'll put the rest of them away. And I don't pick up toys. I mean, it's just, I have 5 little kids, 2 to 10, and I don't touch toys ever. It's amazing. Like, I don't spend 10 minutes or 30 minutes a day cleaning or organizing or touching toys. They are entirely responsible for their toys.
I love it. I don't pick up my toys for my kids, but I feel like I'm constantly asking them to pick them up. Mm-hmm. It's the same battle.
Mm-hmm. And it's too overwhelming is what my kids were in. They had 20 or 30 or 50 toys in their bedroom, and it was so chaotic and it was so overwhelming that they would just break into tears. Like, Mama, I can't do this. And they hated picking up toys, and I hated telling them to pick up toys. And now it reduced all of that conflict to where it's manageable for all of us.
Well, Jillian, you gave us so much good stuff today, and I'm so glad that we were able to have you on the show. If our listeners would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is hands down my weekly email. I generally email my audience like once a week, and it's just an email from me, but you can always hit reply. I always answer like every single one of those.
They can get to that through your website?
Yeah, a couple different places on my website. It's really easy to find. To just sign up and confirm, and lovely, sometimes surprising emails from me start showing up every week. Sometimes I actually write like separate blog content or posts or things that I just don't really want to publish on the internet.
Right.
I just email them to my subscribers because they're like my friends. So it's kind of like a private email between friends. And then there's a link to the public content.
All right. We will link the web address into our show notes so people can find you there. Well, Jillian, thank you so much again for coming on the show. We have so much good stuff here for our listeners, and I just know that it's going to bring benefit to their lives. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, House of Five family, that brings this episode to a close. We appreciate you listening. And if you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. To show our appreciation, for every 5 reviews we receive, we will reward that listener with one of our favorite reads. And you can find out what that is in our show notes. Don't forget to also send us an email with your review screen name so that we can track who has left a review. Our hope for this show is that we have both inspired you and provided you with practical tools to aid you in your journey to financial independence. We welcome your feedback, and you can do that in one of three ways. You can message us on our website, houseoffi.com, through the contact page. You can also leave a voice message there. The final way is that you can send us an email at info@houseoffi.com. We read every message. Once again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you back here next week.